Greetings. My name is Derek Solberger over at Integrity and Compliance Solutions. I had scheduled to speak at a conference in Tulsa next month. Unfortunately, under the current circumstances, that conference has been canceled. What we thought we'd do is take that presentation and break it down into some episodes for our Learning Center.
So, for the first episode of Hazardous Liquids Accidents History over the last decade, we thought we'd take a look at excavation-related accidents, since the summer is historically the most probable months for excavation-related accidents. So where do we find this data? So it's coming from some compiled PHMSA accident report history. Operators are required to submit these reports when they have a spill of over 5 gallons, with some exceptions for maintenance activity and additions for environmental or economic impact events. I think it's important to notice the form underwent some significant improvements in 2010. On the left is previous 4-page form. On the right is now today's 17-page form. PHMSA is now collecting over twice as many fields, and there's some pre-populated types and subtypes to help steer operators towards some common answers for an easier data analysis and trend development data set. And for today's conversation, equipment excavator types are collected. So how can we use the data? Well, first of all, let's look geographically. Now that we're all reporting in decimal degrees, it's easy to display in GIS software. On this map, we're displaying the items involved in the accident and the size of the spill. For scale, the smallest point represents spills of less than 1,500 barrels, while the largest represents spills of greater than 30,000 barrels. You can really see the supply and demand networks that have been historically developed in the lower 48. And while accidents appear to be a burden primarily on the supply regions, they affect us all. So let's take a look at excavation-related spills. Here's the same map, now filtered for excavation-related accidents. The supply states do show a majority of the events, but we can see a distribution of events across the country. Wherever there's pipeline, we can have pipeline-related excavation accidents. So let's take a look at the data now. So we mentioned earlier that PHMSA is tracking equipment types involved in excavation accidents. So here's our excavation bar chart graphic. On the bottom is a legend that has the equipment types tracked by PHMSA now. On the left is the total barrels spilled. And the arm in the bucket of the traco is our accident count by equipment type. So looking at the top 3 contributors, a couple quick observations. Trenchers lead in total volume and in volume per accident. It's probably not a surprise they're an excellent piece of equipment for rapid and cost-effective trenching. They're just unforgiving when they encounter foreign pipelines. Second in the category, backhoes and tracos, they lead the accident event count. Also common trenching equipment, viewed as a surgical capable piece of equipment, but that can lead to operator overconfidence, and as the data shows, complacency when it comes to minimum clearance requirements and hand tool use. Finally, our unknown and other type. After further review, these are primarily bulldozers, sometimes thought of as earth moving, but as the data reports here, there are greater spill potential on a per accident basis than our backhoes and tracos. So other observations. Well, historically we thought of high strength steels as being more common to these accidents. The data shows here that mild steels are more likely victims. And what are we spilling? Well, unfortunately it's highly volatile liquids. Technically we're talking about vapor pressures in excess of 40 psi, but more commonly we're talking about NGLs, propanes, butanes, ammonias. Excavation accidents make up 142 of the 3,900 accidents in the data set, and they're 11% more likely to ignite, and they're 84% more likely to explode. So why is this happening? Well, first of all, we got to have a one call. Equipment operator needs to know and be aware of the obstacles and risks that he's going to encounter. And we notice that certain equipment types are less likely to submit these one calls. If this is an accident that relates to farm equipment, road maintenance, or dozer, there's a less than 20% chance that a one call was submitted. So we definitely have some room for improvement here. So if it was not a one call related accident, then what? Well, most likely we didn't observe good excavation practices related to separation, probing, and hand tool use. Those excavation best practices were not observed. Or maybe bad locates. Either there's no information available or poor records available. And possibly inappropriate locating methodology was used. We may have used inductive locating when we should have been using conductive connections. All relating down to training. So that about covers the data set. Unfortunately, we did have a fatality in this data set when a general public surface owner made contact with a propane line with his bulldozer. Let's look at the financial impacts. So let's talk about some of the financial impacts of this excavation-related accident category. So as an industry, we spent over $173 million in this excavation category. I think it's important to note that these costs don't include operator business loss or product loss. These costs are primarily property damages, environmental damages, infrastructure repair. So on average, we're spending about $1.2 million per accident. And based on about 214,000 miles of DOT 195 pipe last year, we spent over $8,100 per 100 miles on an annual basis. So what are the takeaways? I think we got some opportunities for education here. There's some opportunities to provide some training to both equipment operators as well as line locators. I think there's some wonderful resources out there. The 811 and the One Call state agencies have some great training resources both online and in the classroom to improve excavator knowledge and operator knowledge. There's also a group, the Common Ground Alliance group. They've got great best practices for the industry. They're a regional data warehouse for specific risks within your area, within your regional footprint, as well as technology updates and monitoring those technologies that could help us mitigate these accidents in the future. And secondly, I think that our relationship with our surface owners is paramount to avoiding these type of accidents going forward. Whatever we can do to educate them on a regular basis about the risks that lie beneath their feet will help us. They're also our second most likely identifier of accidents. So as we'll discuss in later episodes, corrosion-related episodes, they're a wonderful resource for us. So those relationships are important. And then finally, whenever we can have somebody witness excavation, that'll help us out. Not just the immediate damage mitigation, but also any damage to coating can be a future problem for us, as we'll discuss later in corrosion-related episodes as well. So that pretty much concludes our data. I appreciate your time. If you have any interest in an in-depth review of the data or discussion of our services, please reach out to us on our website. Thank you very much.